And our final speaker in this session is Ilanit Branchina, a doctoral researcher in sociology and anthropology at Tel Aviv University. Ilanit's work investigates the generation of ethical relations and moral knowledge thought encounters between humans and rescued farm animals. By bridging academic inquiry with her active advocacy in sanctuary communities, she offers a profound look at new forms of care and responsibility in contemporary Israel. Ilanit.
Hello, everyone, and thank you to Gal and the organizers for the important space. Earlier this week, I visited Nofarim Hostel in Yarka, a secure facility for justice-involved youth from the Arab community. I had the privilege of sitting with Suhair Odea, who initiated the project I'm presenting today, and Nadal Askale, the hostel director. I also met with the staff and spoke directly with several of the young men in the program. One of the boys told me about Amir, a sheep at Freedom Farm Sanctuary. Amir arrived after severe abuse and trauma, unable to walk. After recovering and getting his wheelchair, Amir transformed from a terrified person into one who runs with his friends. The boy shared that a special bond had formed between them. He feels Amir has emotions just like a human. When he pets him, he feels he is with a close friend. He is moved by Amir's courage and feels that whenever he arrives at the farm, Amir is truly happy to see him. I began with Amir's story because it raises a central question. Are we ready to take the emotional lives of animals seriously without reducing them to mere copies of humans or simple therapeutic objects? I draw upon the work of Barbara King, who challenges human exceptionalism, the assumption that human uniqueness implies emotional superiority. King invites us to recognize that other animals also experience connection, fear, grief, and joy in their own distinct ways. My name is Ilanit Branchina, a PhD candidate in sociology and anthropology at Tel Aviv University. My research explores human-animal relations in farm sanctuaries in Israel, focusing on how moral and therapeutic knowledge are co-created within those spaces. In today's talk, I am first to offer an anthropological perspective on how mutuality and compassion are practiced in human-animal relations. Second, I will present the collaboration between Nofarim Hostel and the Freedom Farm Sanctuary. And third, I will show how translation is more than a tool. It's where ethics are born between Arabic and Hebrew, staff and youth, and humans and animals. My central argument is that mutuality is not a self-evident starting point. It's crafted gradually within unequal power dynamics through translation, attentiveness, and ongoing labor. My perspective stems from a multi-species anthropology that recognizes human lives are deeply entangled with animals. Anat Singh proposes the arts of noticing, using our senses to step outside the human bubble and discover our web of connections with other beings. In my doctoral work at farm sanctuaries in Israel, I focus on how moral and therapeutic knowledge is produced in practice through cleaning, feeding, and medical care. Here, animals are not backdrops, they are active participants. From these perspectives, let's turn to the field. Amir's story did not occur in a vacuum. For a boy from a locked facility to sit beside a wounded sheep and recognize him as a friend, an entire architecture of trust was required. This architecture was built together by Suhair, Nadal, Adit, Meital, the instructor staff, and the animals themselves. The project was initiated 4 years ago by Suhair, an animal-assisted therapist at Nofarim Hostel. Suhair and Dani Podim led the first group together. Instructors Tamar, Zohar, and Ziv joined the project later on. They all bring deep familiarity with the animals. Freedom Farm Sanctuary, founded by Adit Romano and Meital Ben-Ari, is a space with a clear moral vision. Animals are not resources, products, or tools. They are individuals who have survived exploitation. The farm seeks to provide them with a life of safety, rehabilitation, community, movement, and joy. Nofarim Hostel in Yarka, under the leadership of Nadal Askale, is a secure residential facility for justice-involved youth from the Arab community, housing 24 young men. It is far more than just a place of supervision. During my visit, I encountered a well-maintained environment that balances very clear boundaries with a profound belief in the boys' capacity to change, excel, and succeed. Nadal and his staff have created a physical, emotional, and educational space that provides those youth with the best possible conditions. The facility has been recognized as an outstanding institution for 2 consecutive years. Some of the boys even represent Israel in international robotic competitions, achieving impressive achievements. The project is an ongoing process. Suhail leads processing groups at the hostel, and twice a month, the boys travel to the Freedom Farm Sanctuary. They don't just visit, they work. Cleaning enclosures, preparing food, and providing delicate care. In this multi-species space, a new moral attentiveness is formed. The boys learn to see animals not as objects or tools, but as vulnerable subjects with their own will and agency. This sparks a transformation within the hostel. According to Suhail, the boys now share their experiences in evaluation committees and legal contexts with greater confidence, describing how animals change their thinking on harm and compassion. The staff also notes a shift in the boys' own relationships. They become more attentive to one another, acting as a group developing mutual responsibility. Furthermore, Suhail notes that this impact extends beyond their participants themselves. The boys bring those lessons of care back to the hostel, sharing their experiences and passing those values on to their peers, creating a wider circle of mutual responsibility within the community. The project bridges separate worlds, a locked facility and a sanctuary, Arabic and Hebrew, labor and therapy. Within this connection, a new language of responsibility begins to emerge. The boys come from a reality of marginalization and exposure to violence. Recognizing those conditions does not negate responsibility. Rather, it allows us to ask how responsibility can be relearned, not through punishment, but through connection, labor, and care. To understand this, we must look at the languages operating here: Arabic, Hebrew, and the embodied language of humans and animals expressing fear, trust, and refusal. Those languages are not neutral. Arabic and Hebrew carry history and power dynamics, while the embodied language requires all participants to listen beyond words. Moral knowledge is not an abstract idea, but practical knowledge generated in the encounter with a vulnerable other. Responsibility is morality in action. It's the moment a boy alters his voice, pace, and touch to enter an animal's space. Drawing on Stanley Cavell, I ask, even when humans speak, can we ever truly know with certainty what they mean? Words are never enough. We listen to tone, body, silence, and gaze. Therefore, the ethical question is not whether I know with certainty what the other feels, but whether I am willing to acknowledge that the other is addressing me and to respond. Responsibility begins not with certainty, but in the gap, the misunderstanding, and the need to slow down. In this project, translation operates on several layers. Suhail translates between Arabic and Hebrew, and between the words of the hostel and the sanctuary. The FAR instructors translate the animal's body language. and gradually the boys become translators themselves, learning to read fear, trust, and refusal. This is where the language of responsibility takes place, as the capacity to alter one's actions in response to the other. To seize this responsibility in practice, I will share 3 cases. What happens when I don't master the language? When I am stronger? And what happens when the other chooses to trust? At the end of each visit, Suir encourages the boys to address the farm instructors in Hebrew. Tal al-Assad argues that translation is never neutral. It occurs within power dynamics. Without erasing the power relations in the field, I will attempt to move beyond them. It is important to be cautious not to read the attempt to speak Hebrew as a simple story of integration or progress. In my view, this is a more complex moment. It is not just a transition from one language to another, nor is it merely language acquisition. It is an attempt to create a direct connection within space defined by gaps in language and power. When a boy attempts to speak directly to a Jewish instructor in Hebrew, he takes upon himself part of the relational labor. He is willing to make mistakes, to stutter, to search for words, and to let go of control in order to address the other himself. The instructors, too, are required to practice a different kind of listening, to hear partial Hebrew not as failure, but as an effort, an appeal, a sign of respect, and a desire for connection. In this way, a mutual responsibility is formed, one that does not negate the power dynamic between Hebrew and Arabic, but attempts to operate within them differently. But translation and responsibility are not limited to words. They translate into the body. This physical translation is most evident in the rabbit living space. In the rabbit area, a space requiring extreme caution, the boys must learn a language of delicacy, to slow down and remain attuned to the small body in their grasp. The caregivers allow the boys to join medical checkups, weighing and examining the rabbits with profound jealousness. They also maintain the area, ensuring the rabbits were safely moved and returned. One of the boys shared a reflection that captures this shift. Before I entered the hostel, I used to hold a gun. Now I hold a rabbit and return it to its home. Here, power is expressed not through dominance, but through protection. Through this story, we see responsibility learned through the body. The hand, once perhaps associated with threat or survival, becomes a hand that cradles a vulnerable life. Power dynamics remain. The boy is stronger than the rabbit, but precisely because of this power, he learns to limit it. He discovers that power can be expressed through protection rather than dominance. But responsibility is not only about patience or the avoidance of force. It is also about creating a space where the animal itself can initiate the connection. Udi is a large bull who does not always allow closeness. One day, while a boy was brushing him, the instructor, Dani, provided an essential act of translation. She explains that Udi does not necessarily enjoy proximity, emphasizes his boundaries, and the possibility of refusal. When the boy finished and stepped away, Udi returned to him, asking with his body to continue. In this moment, the animal transformed from a reception of care into active participant. By returning and requesting contact, Udi teaches the boy that intimacy cannot be coerced. Responsibility here means understanding that closeness is not taken by force, but co-constructed with the other. Finally, as I draw to a conclusion, I want to reflect on what those encounters teach us about the essence of responsibility. In all those moments, responsibility is not a slogan. It's a practical language. How to hold without frightening, how to stop when the other moves away, and how to recognize trust when it is given. Donna Harris uses the term responsibility, the practical capacity to respond to another being. This is the heart of the project. Language and translation are not just tools for understanding. They are the very site where ethics are forged. Responsibility begins the moment I realize that the other, whether human or animal, does not need to speak my language perfectly for me to be committed to listening and to altering my actions in response. And ending this talk, I want to thank Suir, Nadal, and the teams at Nofarim and Freedom Farm, Adit, Meital, Dani, Tamar, Zohar, and Ziv, for the trust and the opportunity to learn from this journey. Above all, thank you to the boys and to the animals for teaching us to listen beyond the words. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Ilanit, for your talk.